Hey there, welcome to episode 111 of the FFS Talk audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo, as usual. Today's title and topic, Cars versus Pedestrians. I wonder what could have inspired this for today. We are recording this at 1:12 in the morning, a.m., Pacific Standard Time here in the Greater Vegas area. So since it's after midnight, it is Thursday, January 8th, 2026. This show is normally published on Thursday, so we're getting a little jump, a little ahead of the curve, unlike yesterday when I was a couple hours later than normal. But hey, you get what you pay for, right? If you are not familiar with the FFS Talk audio program, the premise is this. Someday I will have a guest or guests, and we will converse, we will debate, we will argue, we will attempt to solve the riddle of what works and what doesn't, and what we might do about it. Until that time, I've managed to get 111 episodes in solo. These are essentially audio essays that present that same structure on a variety of topics, which I consider to be seeds of future discussion. Someone might listen to an episode and say, I have a better idea than that. Or I think the premise is wrong, or I think the things that don't work actually do work, or whatever the case may be. So the idea is to plant many seeds and then try to convince someone to come in and argue their side or argue their viewpoint. Like I said, debate, maybe argument, outright yelling, who knows, who can say. Some people have strong opinions and hopefully they're happy to share. If you're not familiar with what FFS means, I will say it's an expression you will hear often in Ireland somewhere, sometimes elsewhere. There are more Irish people in America than in Ireland. Other people might say it as well. If you say FFS to someone, they will probably know what you mean if they've been around. If you don't know what it means, you should try to hang out with some Irish people. Go into a pub, yell FFS, see what they say. Irish pub, but even a British pub or a Scottish pub would probably do the job somewhere in that general area. Hopefully, wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a brief summary of one long sentence, which I will read, and two of the normal episodes. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Two of the normal program links. So these are the same in every program. So I'm going to stop reading those. I'm doing this across all of my audio programs, so you can click on them if you want. Maybe every once in a while I'll read them for people. But you know how to click on things, and if you're able to locate the episode description, you'll find those links. So you can always go to buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, which is one of the links, and you'll find the links anyway. If we have episode links, relevant articles or references of some sort, I will include those and I will mention them, because usually I have some sort of comment particular to the specific link. So all that said, let's get started so we can get finished. Summary of today's episode. I may have spoken of this before, but lately I'm really feeling the difference between being inside a car and in front of one out on our streets here in Vegas. And this really should not be the case in this 21st century, should it? So like I said, the links, you can find them. ffstalk.com. Okay, I cheated. And I already gave you the other one. Life of the pedestrian. That's usually me. I am reasonably certain that most people who drive cars of any kind, who do not also engage in pedestrian activities now and then, completely lose any sense of what the pedestrian viewpoint is or might be. And it would make sense if pedestrians who do not drive, or who maybe have not driven yet, perhaps they are not yet licensed to drive, for example, students, younger students perhaps, lack the awareness of a driver's perspective. It can boggle the mind and raise the ire, though, to be in this situation so often, and that is often true here in Vegas in general. Here in the Greater Vegas area, pedestrian car incidents are not uncommon. And in fact, is it a hyphen or a dash? We'll have to think about that. They're not uncommon. And in fact, by the end of each calendar year, there's usually some highlighting of the efforts to reduce these incidents. They'll give a total incident count and don't forget, call this number to be reminded to not hit people with your car. There have been various campaigns to try to increase pedestrian safety, reduce collisions. Hit and run is a problem. And then in early January, there's usually a highlight of the first pedestrian hit and run incident or similar. It always happens. Oh, the first pedestrian to be, whatever happens. It may be like this in other places too. I don't know. Trying to think. When I was in high school, before I had my driver's license, I was a pedestrian quite often. People would get hit by cars every once in a while. That was unfortunate. One student when I was in high school, 1 year younger than me, was taken out by a vehicle, run over. That was not a happy evening. It was during a football game. So students would walk across the street to a convenience store to get soda and whatnot, soft drinks. Very sad night. It may be like this in other places also, like I said, but I would propose that the transient nature of the Vegas population brings driving styles from a variety of places. And there is that difference in awareness I mentioned. So I think pedestrians are at maybe an elevated risk here in Vegas, but it's a little macabre to go comparing numbers like, ooh, are we doing better at the, so one is one too many, especially if it's me, which so far it has not been. I still have my driver's license in Nevada, and while I thought I might have lost my driver legs, so to speak, if that is a thing, I don't know. The last time I drove a car, all was well. And granted, this was a while ago, but it had been a while since I drove. So I think I am retaining my driver senses and, of course, my daily pedestrian senses. So when I see how other drivers are driving, I'm the pedestrian, I see some of the mistakes they're making, and I kind of keep them in mind. So maybe that's keeping my driver sensibilities tuned, not atrophied. I tend to pay a lot of attention to the driver around me when I'm walking about, so I can see that there are some liberties taken when it comes to looking for pedestrians. They often do not. Check the phone, begin the left turn on the green arrow, then check to see if there are people in the crosswalk. Yep, happens all the time. Too often, if you ask me. I'm careful about this, but I also don't freak out. I usually, if I see a car that's making a left turn and not slowing down while I'm in the crosswalk, I can usually judge it. So I'm going to be usually I'm past the driver's side of the vehicle, or I'm in by the time they reach me, I would be just at the driver's edge of their vehicle. So if I really needed to, I would just take one or two big quick steps. If I see it's going to be more of a problem, I'll step up the pace a little bit. But generally speaking, I just tend to look right at the driver if they're doing this, because very clearly they were not looking right at me when they initiated their turn. So this happens frequently. There's one particular intersection where I pass through it quite often. Probably happens 10% of the time, depending on what time I'm actually walking through there. It's a fact of life. Pedestrian life is not easy. So in keeping with the standard format of the show, what works? Well, now there are some standard rules when it comes to pedestrians. Like if they are on the sidewalk, the pedestrians, the cars should not be. That's always helpful. They should not be in general, actually. If there's no pedestrians, stay off the sidewalk. That's good. You would be amazed. We have broad norms that also work internationally, like yielding to cars most of the time, which I'm happy to do. I mean, I'm not moving really fast, so if I need to wait a few more seconds for a car to move out of the risk posture around me, that is totally fine. Basically, no matter where you are, assuming the driver of any vehicle cannot see you or is not paying attention to you and does not know how pedestrians deal with cars, or maybe they're just really out to get you. Hope not. This is the way to go. Walk defensively. Let the cars get out of your way. Let them do their thing. Quick story. When I was in China, I was in Shenzhen. We had gone to Walmart. So we were not in a commercial area. It was more not a country road, but it was certainly between the Walmart and where other stores were. So it was kind of just a normal street, a little bit of a bend to it, and there was some traffic. So there was no crosswalk, no crossing signal. The person I was with started walking and had my hand, like, come on, let's go. Now she lived there. So I was there for Maker Faire, by the way. Good times. Maker Faire Shenzhen. It was the first time they did it. So it was a while ago. There were a lot of people in Shenzhen for this who were from other places. That's always the case. So you never know who's going to be driving. That would be my only concern about this. But generally speaking, in China, the standard, the cultural norm, the societal norm, pedestrian walks, cars do their thing. So it's basically you're both going to have to avoid each other, but the pedestrian's pretty much in charge of doing that. So when we started walking, I said, "Oh, this we should let them pass." And so I paused, and she freaked out. Come on, and because she timed it, she knew what she was doing. She timed it so that we would pass in front of what was in fact a person on like a scooter that was towing like a little trailer that looked like it had like 100 cardboard boxes broken down, stacked up on it. It might have been wood. I can't remember, but it looked like a stacked piling of flat things on a little trailer. Would not have been pleasant if that person had to swerve or take evasive action. So I was thinking we should cross behind that person, but there was like a van coming behind it. So she had made this assessment, and it was her city, right? This was not my place to make this decision. So we made it in front of the vehicle. So if there are norms like that, you run into trouble in a place like Vegas because people are from so many different places. Some people will yield to pedestrians and you're like, no, go. Other places will take the right of way away from pedestrians. Some people will assume you're going to cross behind them, cross in front of them, so all that. So whenever you see those crazy traffic videos from China or India where there's huge amounts of cars, I have this sense that there are some of these norms in place that help people negotiate these, maybe arbitrate for a lane, get across the street, get around through an intersection, etc. So kind of interesting. But anyway, we obviously didn't get hit by the vehicles. That was good. Another thing that works, pedestrian bridges and tunnels. So a bridge goes over the street, the tunnel goes under. Tunnels are not as common, but they are out there. When I was taking the train in San Francisco in the Bay Area, the Diridon station in San Jose, I think it's Diridon, it's one of the San Jose stations, has tunnels that go under the train tracks. So similar idea. These are good. There are pedestrian bridges that cross some of the strip here in Vegas. And aside from escalators that don't always work, the elevators are kept up. They're more usually working to maintain accessibility. So you can always take the elevator if you don't want to take the stairs, if the escalators are out. They make crossing the strip, and there are a couple of bridges that are parallel to the strip. So you're crossing the arterial streets, I guess, if you want to call them that. It makes it easy. Piece of cake. You can't go wrong. Basically, basically you're able to get across the street without even thinking about it. They make it demonstrably easier and safer, no question. Some parts of the strip do not have bridges. The difference is obvious. I want to say it's the Paris entrance. So there's a what's across the street from Paris is a Bellagio, like the north side of the Bellagio compound. So there's a lot of taxis coming in and out, so they want to make their right turn. So if you're going to cross east to head to the Paris resort, you are going to be crossing at the street level in a crosswalk, waiting for traffic controls and stuff. It's a pain, and it's a little tense sometimes. The bridges are a piece of cake. Crossing signals are good, but I got to tell you, traffic controls for crosswalks, that is push button to cross and then the red light starts blinking like somebody's in the crosswalk, those can make a huge difference. In fact, when that person got run over when I was in high school, they put that setup in that intersection. So there were, you could not mistake that oh, somebody's crossing. I can tell I'm 2 miles away and I can see those lights blinking. So those can make a huge difference. Obviously, after the fact, not so much, but I'm kind of a fan. Yeah, they specifically have a red light over each lane. Unfortunately, these are essentially over the crosswalk. So depending on, here the pedestrian has to be a little bit mindful before they step into the crosswalk to cross the street, like make sure people are actually slowing down. But hey, it does make a difference. These are about as close to bridges and tunnels as you're going to get without actual construction. So you get it's not quite as good, but you get some sort of specific assistance for the pedestrian to say, hey, I'm here. They can see that you're about to be there without you having to actually be there. It's a shame that these are not more broadly deployed. And where I live, and I usually walk about 3 miles, this is my usual daily kind of get outside and get some fresh air. There is one intersection with such equipment, and I don't cross it where that is, so it doesn't really help me. But it makes a big difference. These would essentially be universal indicators where car traffic controls with pedestrian indicators like the walk and don't walk signs would be visible more easily to the pedestrian. I'm sorry, those are more easily visible to pedestrians, but not the drivers. But these would be more visible to the drivers, so I think they would be nice to have. We should be so lucky. Yeah, mostly where I think I described the left turn situation. Yeah, I did. That intersection, the pedestrian signal on the traffic signal pole, the one that I will take occasionally does not offer like, I can't, there's some standard for 4 lanes, so 2 lanes each direction. I want to say it's like 20 seconds, but it'll start counting down at 1. That's a bug. And so that's not very helpful. And if someone is going to so then the left turn arrow will trigger before a normal, suitable amount of walk time is allowed, provided. And so if this happens, you're definitely going to have someone that starts to make their turn. If they're waiting at the light before they make their turn, that's a little bit better because they don't have the momentum. But if they are approaching the light and they continue through the intersection making their turn, that gets a little dicey. Then you definitely want to walk out of the way. But I notice these things. I take the proaction to note, oh, someone is coming and they are not going to slow down. You can tell. So when I see, and this is usually, there's like an hour or two during the day, during the evening. It might be also in the morning. I think it's probably set during rush hour times to, for some stupid reason, set the pedestrian timer incorrectly. So yeah, that's a little bit tricky. And then the left turn is always the trouble. The right turners, you can pretty much look at them. It's like being on first base and you can tell if the guy's going to steal or whoever's going to steal. So you just look at each other like, are you going to go or are you going to let me go? And you find out pretty quickly. But people making that left turn, they are never looking to the left. They're looking for the car approaching. And when they see that there's no car approaching them so they can turn, then they will, oh, I'm about to hit someone in the crosswalk. That's a bummer. Yeah, it happens all the time. Well, I normally try to find 3 things that work. But aside from some common expectations that enable a nearly universal communication channel between pedestrian and driver, nonverbal, and proactive traffic controls and alternate paths like bridges and tunnels and crosswalk lights would be great. What else is there? I've seen crosswalks where they embed I think they're white lights. They might be red. They might be alternating white and red or something. They embed them in the street. This actually might be cheaper because you don't have to erect any extra poles. You don't have to run. I think the lights I mentioned that are near me are suspended on a cable between 2 poles. You don't have to have an entire new pole assembly. So maybe, I don't know which one is cheaper. Obviously, the ones that are suspended over the crosswalk are more visible, I think. But having lights, certainly at night. During the day, I think the elevated lights are probably more useful. At night, you can see that there's a crosswalk and that someone's crossing. You can see those lights more distal. But yeah, aside from these two options, these two general options, like I said, some norms and some actual notice controls and alternate paths, right? So people can actually take these pro actions. I guess the third one is luck. We all need a little bit more luck. Luck can work. Here in Vegas, you can measure that luck in a monthly report from the LVCVA on gaming winnings, gaming revenue. Yeah, I knew I've benefited from my share of the luck now and then, with near misses now and then to keep me alert. Or I guess then and now. Yeah, I haven't been hit by a car here in Vegas yet, but it's, if anybody's betting, I guess I am. All the time. What does not work? At the end of the day, it is the driver versus pedestrian. That's just the way it is. Driver distraction can be a powerful ally on the wrong side. Yeah, who invented the no physical controls, the touchscreens in cars? That's the dumbest idea ever invented. Pedestrians can be distracted as well, though, speaking of touchscreens. And if I were being honest, it is often some form of mobile device moving attention from our opponent to a small screen. Now, pedestrians, I've seen pedestrians looking at their phones. I'm even guilty of that every once in a while. I make a concerted effort to put my phone, if I have it in my hand, I make sure that everyone can see that I'm not looking at it when I step into the crosswalk. So nobody's going to say, oh, look, he's not even looking. I have not witnessed someone making the left turn while looking at their phone. But I suspect while they're waiting at the light, they're probably checking their phone or doing whatever, so that when they see the car go by opposite direction, opposing lane, I think they go, okay, now I can go. So they put their phone down and they just go, and then they don't notice me. Surprise. So I'm guessing, but that seems possible. Or maybe they're just not paying attention and they're looking at they're playing with their touchscreen. They're looking at whatever their car is doing before the traffic is clear, and then they forget to check for the crosswalk. Happens all the time. All the time. Traffic controls and the alternate routes are sometimes ignored. So those bridges and tunnels, that rush to beat a light or maybe to go anyway, maybe run the light, ignoring the walk signals, skipping the extra distance to get to a bridge and just choosing to jaywalk. So yes, pedestrians can play their part in ignoring the minimal protections if they are available. I didn't want to go all the way over and press the crosswalk button. So therefore, the traffic controls for the pedestrian crossing signs, the signals for that, were not in use because I didn't feel like pushing the button. That can make a difference. The button with two T's. Drivers also, blind corners, curves, and a variety of unassuming features of a right-of-way can play their part in blocking visibility. So it isn't always action, but lack of familiarity with the terrain, the environment, and the things can go bad very quickly. It's always amazing to me that cars are moving much more quickly than pedestrians, usually, and they will get very bent out of shape if you are crossing a street and you aren't moving quickly enough for them. I've had someone who nearly hit me in a crosswalk. It was late at night. I looked at the car as it was coming at me. I just stared at it I didn't stop. I was walking through the intersection. I was in what they would consider the far lane as they began to make their turn. You're supposed to turn into the near lane. So I think he kind of moved to the near lane. So he passed behind me and then he stopped, and I was looking at him the whole time. I swerved my head while I was walking, hit the sidewalk, and he opens his window and says, "Why were you staring at me?" I said, "Because you're not supposed to hit the person in the crosswalk." He's like, "I had the green arrow." And I said, "It was actually blinking yellow. But because I was in the crosswalk, I was crossing with the walk sign." So he was pretending. And I said, "Well, I don't like to get hit by cars, so I'm going to watch you approach me." He gave me the stink eye and drove off. That's Vegas for you. And then what else does not work? If we're being really honest, road rage is not reserved for driver versus driver. And an angry pedestrian can do dumb things as well. So can a driver like I just described. He was apparently pissed off that I was looking at him. I think if a pedestrian is looking at a car approaching the crosswalk that they are in, anyone who takes that the wrong way has never been a pedestrian. Like I'm gonna watch you to make sure you don't hit me. That's the way it is. Escalation can happen in the blink of an eye, and unfortunately, a car beats a pedestrian pretty much every time. Without emotions, with only distraction and unfamiliarity, the situation is already tricky. If we inject anger or whatever it is the person that I just described was feeling, we get to 11 immediately, and then things can go very wrong. I'll tell you right now, I let the cars go, right? So I'll stand on the corner and I'll wait. And if you're at an uncontrolled intersection and someone wants to cross, they'll sit there and flash their lights, or if you're at a T intersection especially, flashing their lights, maybe they'll open the window like, "Are you going to go?" And I just look at them and say, "Nope." So the problem with that, first of all, in many places, it's called directing traffic. So if somebody tells you to go, they are directing traffic, and that is usually not allowed by normal people if you're not a code enforcement or a traffic control officer. So that's usually reserved for police, or like crossing guards have some secret powers there. They got the big sign. That's a big giveaway. So the deal is, yielding to the car, the driver, always works. And what they don't always realize, and this goes back to what I said earlier, that the pedestrian doesn't always put themselves in the driver's seat, and the driver doesn't always put themselves in the pedestrian. So if I could take a moment with each of these drivers and say, "Hey, I know you're thinking, I'm letting this pedestrian guy walk and he's pissing me off because he's not letting me. But I just want to tell them, I can see all the way down the street. You're blocked by whatever other cars that are parked in the parking lot that you're trying to exit. I can see a good mile or two down the street. I know where the car is that's approaching. So if you just go, everybody wins. But if you sit here and blink your lights at me and honk at me and open your window and you want to have a little conversation about what I'm causing you trouble about, you could be in the gap. I'm letting you have the gap. And then there's 25 cars coming and you're going to be sitting, and then I'll just cross like, "Hey, I tried." This happens like 80% of the time because I have more visibility than the driver of the vehicle, but they don't care. They want to get in my face, so to speak, with the honking and the brights. This just happened this evening, earlier. Yeah, well, I guess last night. You got the lights blinking, and so I usually look away, or I'll pull my phone out if it's handy, or I'll look at my watch, or I just look at the driver like, And occasionally, like I said, "Are you going to go?" The other, it was about a week ago, I crossed halfway. There's an island at a different intersection. Actually, there's an island at a few intersections here. The larger capacity streets have a little halfway island. So I'm like, if it's like 3 or 4 in the afternoon, the lights timing is awful, or maybe it's an uncontrolled intersection and I just got to time it. So here again, I can see, I have much more visibility around this curve that's part of this. I can see all the way down this other street. I can see coming traffic on the perpendicular street. So I have a pretty good idea of what the timing of the crossing will be. And sometimes it's going to work better for me if I go to the halfway thing and I just stand on the little island. Sometimes I'll stand in the street on my side of the island so that people don't think I'm trying to jump in front of the cars. So it's very clear. So the other day, somebody in a pickup truck, I'm on the island. I'm like 1 foot down on the ground. So it's not on the other half of the island, if that makes sense. So white pickup truck pulls up, is going to make a left turn. So I'm in the island and I'm standing there. I'm not even looking at him. I'm looking at checking out where other cars are coming so I can time the second half of my crossing. And he's sitting there. He doesn't pull up all the way. So he's like, as if I'm going to cross. And I'm looking at him like, I kind of shake my head a little bit. And he opens his window and says, "Are you going to ask for money or something?" And I said, "What?" He said, "Well, I don't know what you're doing standing there." And I said, "Just go." Literally, just go. Just do the driver thing. So I'm reminded often of China, where that transaction would just simply not have happened. It would have been my responsibility to either try to cross in front of them or wait to go behind. The driver of that vehicle would never think to just go, oh, wait, let me stop and have a conversation with this person about what they're thinking. That just doesn't happen. And I usually think to myself, if you just drive your car and try not to hit the pedestrians, that's good enough. Don't turn left into the crossing or the crosswalk. Just go. Just do your thing. Avoid hitting people. But when it comes to like yielding the right of way and stuff, if a pedestrian is just sitting there and maybe you don't know this, you're not thinking like, oh, they can see twice as far as I can. They're a completely unobstructed view of the street. And because they are not wrapped in steel or sometimes aluminum or whatever the cars are made of, what is it called? Carbon fiber, maybe. They're not wrapped in safety equipment and so on, and they can't accelerate like I can in my car, right? So they're paying really close attention to where these metal objects are moving, flying towards them. So drivers are apparently half the drive, maybe half, I don't know. Like I said, people in Vegas are from all over the place. So you never know what's going to happen. So then what? Just go. So I try to let drivers go. I can see farther. I can see where the cars are coming. And the big thing, do I have this in because I remember typing it. I might repeat this, but so here's a perfect scenario for this. If you are about to cross a street, for example, I mean, I don't really enter the street otherwise. I try to stay on my sidewalk with the bikes. We'll get to that in a second. So if I'm about to cross, there will be perhaps one car. Let's keep it really simple. One car decides maybe they're going to turn right. So they're going to go from my left around the corner I'm standing on, be on their way. They decide they're going to yield to me, like they're waiting for me to go. But there may be in the next lane over, like 10 cars coming. They're not stopping because they got the green. So they're going to go. They're going to go straight through the intersection. So the person who's going to turn right is looking at me. They're not looking behind them because they don't really have to, because those cars are not in that lane. They're in the next lane over. So they're not worried about that. But I am, because guess what? The car's not going to cross in front of those cars, the car that's waiting on me. But I am. So I'm like, I'm waiting. Now, it's not my responsibility to direct traffic. So I can't say, yeah, just go, because I'm waiting for those. So I just stand there and look at them. And then they get mad at me. Why don't you go? Because, and then here's the tricky part. The driver in a car in that situation is making a lot of assumption about a pedestrian on a sidewalk. I may just be standing on the corner. I may be waiting for someone to come and pick me up, or I'm going to, I got to guide them to where to park, or, I'll give them the high, like, oh yeah, go in here and then go down to so we do a hand signal. Technically directing traffic, but it's a personal message gesture of sorts, like, yeah, go over there, pick me up. These drivers have no idea. So what I end up with is, like I said, people get very angry because they're yielding to me and I'm not accepting this gesture because they don't know what my plans are. And like I said, I can usually see much more of the situation than they can because they're wrapped in metal and I'm free to see everything around me without obstruction. So it can be a little weird and a little dodgy and unnecessarily tense. And like I said, those can very quickly turn into like somebody gets upset and they may decide, oh, now that you've stepped in the crosswalk, maybe I'm gonna pull up on you a little bit. Yeah. Things can go to 11 immediately. So what can we do about this? What could we do? And remember, I'm an engineer. If you didn't know that, I am. So a couple of the ideas here are going to be a little nerdy and unlikely, but I'm thinking outside the box, thinking outside the car. So most driver's license requirements have a fairly limited section regarding pedestrians. Basically, don't hit them. Cars move faster. They are heavier with more momentum, P equals mv, and they stand up to human bodies really well. You can dent a car, but a car will crush you, right? So people pretty much lose. Try to avoid that. Don't test that. As well, there is a presumption that pedestrians can get themselves around. They must know how the drivers are going to behave, what the drivers are going to do. as a pedestrian, right? If you're a high school kid or younger, you don't have your driver's license yet, you probably have no experience driving a vehicle. So there's this presumption that, oh, well, those kids were getting in my, well, the kids have no perspective from the driver's seat typically, right? So the driver really has to be responsible for not hitting the pedestrians. The pedestrians have to be responsible for keeping themselves out of harm's way to an extent, right? They don't know what you're going to do, but they do know where the sidewalk is. They do know how to work the crosswalk, right? That should be like first day of school. Oh, we're walking to school. Let's go through the steps, right? They do it on every airplane flight. I used to be on 100 airplanes a year or more. I've heard the speech more than 100 times every year. Something about a seatbelt and an airbag or something. I don't know. So, no, I could probably repeat it to you right now. So, what to do as a pedestrian, and like I said, you should always assume that the drivers have no idea. They don't see you. They may even be trying to hit you. So be defensive, and you can teach that. Doesn't have to be part of a licensing procedure or something, but it's a good habit to be in if you're going to be on the streets. To just assume that you're going to have to take evasive action because somebody's not paying attention, and it should not be you that's not paying attention. So yeah, but the drivers are supposed to be somewhat aware of the right of way and what the crosswalk deal is and the signals and all that. I don't recall here in Nevada, but in Arizona, there was a specific rule. I don't know if it's still true, but it used to be the case. Jaywalking, that is crossing an intersection without a crosswalk, without the traffic control lights and so on, just crossing in the middle of a street somewhere. Technically an unmarked crosswalk. If there's no crosswalk available, an unmarked crosswalk is okay, but if there is one available and you choose to just cross wherever you feel like it, that's jaywalking. And I don't remember why it's called jaywalking, but it's jaywalking. And you could be ticketed for that. It basically comes down to obstructing traffic or interrupting the flow of traffic because there's a crosswalk. This used to happen at my school. Like I said, somebody got hit in a crosswalk. That was cut and dry, very easy. But when you are like, the crosswalk's another 100 yards, I'm just going to cross right here. That's on you as a pedestrian. But here's the deal. In Arizona, the law is very specific. You're not allowed to hit the person. I'm not laughing at the scenario I described earlier. I'm saying that they have to spell that out. Don't hit the person. But you don't have to, you can swerve, go around them. So you don't have to provide them quite the right of way that you would in a crosswalk, but you still don't hit them. So that's how I remember it. It was because when I learned of this, it was one of those things like, yeah, that is the law here. Just don't hit the people. Okay. That seems completely reasonable. So yeah, so everybody should kind of know. And like I said, it's good that there's usually some societal norms in place. They even work internationally, right? If you go to a place that has the driving on the other, on the left, the proper side of the street, usually at street corners, especially in the city, in more urban areas, not so much in suburbs. But if you were walking through Manhattan, but in Manhattan, cars were driving on the proper side instead of the right side of the road, then on the corners, there would be, spray painted in white would be the direction to look, because everybody would probably look to the left, but you have to look to the right, right? So you have to look in a different direction. So for the most part, though, people kind of understand eventually. So those societal norms and formal training can combine here. So you actually show people what can happen when there's a lack of visibility, or I remember one time somebody was, it was in downtown Sunnyvale, so it was not a high speed traffic area, but somebody was turning left from Murphy Avenue onto Evelyn, if you know the area. So I'm on the driver's side across the street, so I'm about to cross towards the car. I'm just on the corner. I'm just doing my thing. Driver's going to turn right, is looking to the left, so they're looking in my direction to see down Evelyn to make sure that they can go and make their right turn. There's no traffic controls. What they don't see is a person is crossing the street in front of where they are about to turn into. So there's a person that would have been hit by this car if the driver had just assume there wasn't and hit the gas, right? Oh, I'm looking, I see that there's no car coming. I'm just going to start to roll and hit the gas, and I'll accelerate into the turn, and then I'll turn my head and see, oh, that I just hit a person, right? So since I was standing there, and again, pedestrians have much better visibility, they can see more of the situation, and we tend to look out for things like this. So she was looking past me, and I held up my finger and I pointed, and I made a face like, uh-oh. And the driver looked back at me, mouthed thank you, and then waited and then turned. So these things can happen, and you kind of have to look around and keep your eye out and so on. But really, when it comes to things like yielding to pedestrians or what's the expected behavior, this is often left to chance. And like I said, sometimes a car will say, go. And you're like, no, I can see more than you. So honestly, it would be safer. And so, for example, in a four-way stop on control, stop signs, no traffic lights, or in the case of signal failure, so that you end up with all blinking red lights, if you've ever come across that, it's a four-way stop. Who goes first if you all arrive at the intersection at the same time? So there's like there's a thing that you can do, and it happens rarely, but you're supposed to know what to do, right? So that's homework for you. Similarly with pedestrians, there should just be a simple thing. If I'm a pedestrian, there's no traffic control device that is giving me the right of way so that everybody is on the same page. Like we all see that the walk signal is blinking, or it's white, solid white, and then it blinks, don't walk for some number of, anyway, everybody knows what all that means. So if that isn't present, uncontrolled intersection, or maybe some jaywalking or whatever the case may be, there should just be an accepted standard norm. Don't hit the pedestrian, but don't give the right of way to the pedestrian. Like if I'm waiting before I cross the street, don't get mad at me, just go. So that should be the norm, right? Because that will always work. If the car assumes the pedestrian is not there, just do your thing. And then guess what? Now the pedestrian knows that the car is no longer there, so they can walk across the street safely, my favorite is like the entrance of an intersection. Cars will they'll hang back. Like, no, go ahead. You can cross on the sidewalk, perpendicular to the entrance. I'm like, just go. Just go. You can be gone in 1 second, but it's going to take me 3 seconds to clear this entrance, right? And then there might be a car that I can see that's about to turn into the entrance. I can see behind you. I can see yield. Let the pedestrian not move if they don't want to. So that's an easy one. That's one thing we can do. Just do your thing, drivers. I have reflective items for walking in the dark. These are barely enough most of the time. If drivers are distracted at all, they don't look. But I do have passive devices like reflective straps and bands. I actually have one all the time. And I have a few extras if I feel like I need to later at night. But like if I'm walking some unfamiliar route, but I pretty much walk the same places, so I know the tricky spots. But so yeah, I have these Velcro, lime green, reflective, glow in the dark, whatever straps. I also have some of the silver tape stuff if I feel like I need to do that. I also have a green, like a roadwork vest, mesh material, totally easy to throw that on. If I was going to be riding a bicycle at night, I would totally get that. So yeah, passive devices, totally helpful if drivers are looking for them, if you're going to be riding or driving or walking at night. These cost money, but are also cost effective, an option for that money. So the return on investment, if you don't get hit by a car where you otherwise would have, that's a pretty easy argument. I will go one better. Active elements that can detect vehicles closing with long-range motion sensing, LiDAR, radar, optical motion, along those lines, something like that. So with an approaching car, a light might start blinking. There might be a buzzing, like a haptic feedback for the pedestrian, like, oh, there's a car coming up behind me. So the driver would be alerted, but the onus would be on the pedestrian to have these active signals. So the active signal could do the lighting to notify the driver, or it could do haptic feedback. Hey, there's some vehicle coming up. This would also work for bicycles, blind spots, and so on. So if you're a pedestrian and you have a blind spot and you could actually detect that with modern technology, who knows, right? Just an idea, just throwing it out there, but a combination of passive and active on the pedestrian's person, I think could make a difference, and it'd be easy enough to test. I've seen things like coats or something like that vest, but it'll have active lighting elements that will indicate, I'm walking here. If you connect the device to a GPS in your phone or a watch, if you're, quantify itself. But if you could communicate with your active devices, maybe Bluetooth or something, the phone might say, oh, this is an area with elevated reports of blind intersections or whatnot. And you can collect that data from populations, unsafe intersections, unsafe stretches of street. So you could basically crowdsource the indication data, and your device could say, oh, you're in an area where there could be more, and it would look at the time of day and stuff. So you could literally, without doing active sensing of motion or upcoming vehicles, you could say, oh, this is an area where we want to turn those lights up, or you want to pay extra attention. You could have a haptic feedback that would say, hey, keep an eye out, put that phone down. But the phone is doing other stuff right now. Don't be doom scrolling. That's a totally interesting idea that I just have fleshed out right here. So that'd be cool. So this would be the pedestrian side of that equation. With each, still spelled it wrong, with an I. So with each new vehicle entering the streets today, carrying mini mainframe computers, essentially that's what they are. Even a not self-driving car has a ton of compute in the vehicle, mostly for entertainment and what do you call it? Like monitoring sensors, and maybe it's reporting to your insurance company. It's telling Google where you are. Who knows? But the entertainment system has a lot of compute on there. So, and the self-driving cars, of course, 10 times the compute probably. Not to mention the sensors and so on. There is room for active communication between pedestrians and the vehicle, and then the vehicle and the driver. A pedestrian can be actively pinging vehicles. It could be kind of like a beacon. I'm here. I'm walking here. So a pedestrian can be actively pinging vehicles. The vehicles could detect these active signals, and if the car, if it's a self-driving car, it would know it's about to make a turn. But if the driver is driving the car, it can say, hey, there's a pedestrian in your turn if you're going to make this left turn that you seem to be about to make. So it could actually give the driver a warning. There could be a heads-up display or something like, hey, right there's a pedestrian. Don't hit that person, if you would be so kind. So the driver would be alerted, and the vehicle might actually take its own avoidance actions. It might actually resist the turn, although those control systems are a little tricky, and it's best to be to notify. But who knows? Sometimes a car will take over if they sense a lane drift, for example. But the driver could be alerted, and hopefully disaster averted. So the vehicle might take its own avoidance actions, especially if it's self-driving. They will already need to detect pedestrians on it with its own sensors, visual with cameras, radar, LiDAR, etc. Active communications would take this to the next level. Rather than the car basically relying on its own detection, which could occasionally be wrong. You can have the pedestrian announcing to the car, or I guess a little more specifically, the pedestrian's phone could be communicating with the car to say, hey, there's a moving obstacle here. Don't hit it, please. So yeah, they will need to detect pedestrians already, but the fun part is self-driving cars would have that extra step. However well it would work, that's another question. But human drivers would not have. They would just be going, and that's where you get into the two. Like if a self-driving car and a human-driven car see you about to cross the street, the self-driving car may have a different utility function. What would be the better choice to make here, go or stop? And the human's going to be like, I got to get to work. Screw the pedestrian, right? So yeah, those things can get tricky. But we have so much compute moving in these cars. So it's an interesting possibility. Now, not anytime soon though, unfortunately, because getting drivers to add required electronics to an existing vehicle is a climb up a very steep hill. Like, oh, you have a 2025, whatever, human-driven vehicle. Well, for only $300, you can add this device that will prevent collisions with pedestrians. And they'll be like, I don't need that. So there you go. You'd have to require it as a legal, what do you call it? The motor vehicle regulations. I can't remember what the thing is called, but the statutes that regulate operating vehicles on roads. And then you'd have to consider different types of vehicles and different weight classes because they all have different momentum and visibility, and cargo, commercial vehicles. Turns into a nightmare. And then you can require it in new vehicles. Like, they used to say, oh, you got to have a catalytic converter in your car if it's manufactured after whatever, 75 or something. So you can just make it a new thing. So new cars are required to have this equipment, but you got millions and millions and millions of cars that don't have it. So you're like, oh, well, but any possibility of a driver side or a car vehicle side, production by street, package of electronics and integrated software for pedestrian safety would be a long way out. I think it would be easier to have the thing I was describing, which is a kind of a cool idea. I'm totally going to write that down when this is done, when I'm done recording this. So how about a note on bikes to wrap this up? Because I didn't bring up bicycles too much, just a little bit. So my observation on bikes, people riding bicycles are in a unique situation. I've done my time in bike lanes. I have a bicycle. I very rarely ride it around here because it's taking my life in my hands. I used to ride it around my neighborhood. So it's kind of suburbs of Vegas. I do live in the city of Las Vegas, but suburban Las Vegas. Still, people are very dangerous. Walking is ironically safer, I guess, most of the time. There are places that do not have sidewalks, but I do not. Let's see. I haven't walked in the unimproved pedestrian areas in a long time. I used to every other morning. I'd walk to the gym, and there was a huge stretch of unpaved, unsidewalked. Yeah, that's no fun. But depending on the time of day, traffic levels, and the nature of the terrain, pedestrians might be better off when it comes to cars. So that's basically what I was describing. I used to ride if you're familiar with the Bay Area again, I used to ride my bicycle sometimes on Lawrence Expressway. I'm amazed that I survived that. Lawrence Expressway is a surface street that it's an expressway, but it acts like a freeway. So people are absolutely not looking out for bicycle. Bike lane, that's just a place where I can merge on or off the expressway. So walking, a safer option in that case. At the same time, people on bikes suffer from the same attention deficit sometimes that vehicle drivers do. So bikes, whatever you're operating, whatever vehicle it is, you get distracted, you're doing your thing, whatever, you're just not paying attention. And in fairness, bicyclists have to pay attention to road obstructions. Somebody might, I've seen this, they push a traffic control, like a sign, like construction or whatever, they'll just push that over into the bike lane. So if you're coming around a bend and you don't see that, you might be sandwiched between a car next to you and this sign, so, we'll give them a little pass, but they have the same attention distraction because of things like this. But it also doesn't help that it is often legal to ride bicycles on sidewalks where the pedestrians are, like me, even if a completely serviceable bike lane is available. Now, occasionally, if you're riding a bicycle at low lighting times of day, there may be broken glass or maybe rocks, and you hit one rock and it screws up your steering, and then you end up tipping over, and now you're in traffic on the ground. That's not good. So again, bicyclist distraction is a little bit more understandable, but riding bicycles on sidewalks is problematic for the pedestrians now, because guess what? Here in Vegas, this is legal, but riders of bicycles are often impatient and find that ringing a bell or yelling, "Excuse me," should be enough to take the right of way from the pedestrian. I have been passed up by people that basically are a sheet of paper between actually making contact with me or not. And it's my fault, right? They kind of make a little gesture as they're going by. I've had people come up behind me and ringing a bell, excuse me. And if I'm listening to an audiobook, I'm not thinking, oh, I hope a vehicle doesn't come up and almost hit me on the sidewalk where I am supposed to be the pedestrian, right? So this happens enough that it's really irksome. I think if a bicyclist feels the need to ride on the sidewalk, they should say, hey, I'm a guest here. I don't really need to be a jerk to the pedestrians, because guess what? I could ride in the street. And if there's no bike lane, I can still ride in the street. And cars will maybe try to hit me, but the fact is I can move much more quickly than the pedestrian in the street. Pedestrians are not supposed to wander around in the street. So in some places, bicycles are classified as motor vehicles. Even if they're not a moped or motorcycle, even a bicycle could be classified as a low horsepower motor vehicle. So they have to obey some of those rules. For example, earlier this evening, I saw somebody in a bicycle lane going against traffic. That's a problem. If you are using proper nighttime lighting on your bicycle, you are shining your headlight into oncoming traffic. That's a problem right there to start. So excuse me is a problem. And in modern times, electric scooters, electric bikes are becoming more popular and can often be operated just like bikes on sidewalks, as is the case where I spend my time on these sidewalks here. So this happens to me. These can move faster with less effort than a bicycle that's pedaled by a human. The impatience on a bike is multiplied a few times over when the rider of an electric conveyance need not think about pedaling. They can just go, and they can go faster without even thinking about it. I have been nearly hit by e-riders that can, more often than cars lately. And though I have not been hit, I am not a fan. It's only a matter of time. And this is at night. And these scooters are often not using electric scooters and electric bikes, e-bikes. These are often not using correct lights for nighttime operation. And they are, like I said, the bell, I can kind of hear it sometimes. I have earbuds that allow me to hear traffic noise and so on. So it's not like I'm wearing noise canceling or any over the ear, completely blocking everything. So I'm not in my own little bubble, but the bell is like, ring, 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 ring. That's not as helpful as there's a bike lane right there. That would be much better. So anyway, I didn't really intend to come up with an idea, but I think I'm going to think about this idea I just had with the warning system for pedestrians, and we'll see what happens. I think that would be kind of cool if you had, because nobody wants to walk along with lights blinking and whatnot. But if you know you are in an area, and I've actually already had this idea with the capturing data on unsafe intersections or unsafe pedestrian or bicycle areas, because often that data is collected from accidents, actual collisions. Like, it'd be nice to know before there's a collision. Like, oh, I almost get hit by a car here. I can tell, like I've already described, there are two, we could say three, but two definite places where I would put my little post-it note or my drop a pin or however you want to do it. These two that I walk through in my usual constitutional, I walk every day pretty much. These are two spots that I would say these are unsafe. One of them is a controlled intersection with lights and walk signs, everything I said earlier. It's 1 second sometimes. And the other one has very poor street lighting, it's not controlled. It's a T intersection. And yeah, that's been probably even more dangerous for me. Still not hit yet, but could happen. So if my phone would tell my, my safety device, oh, we're entering a little region of questionable safety, let's turn those blinkers on. So it would start to blink. So that would save battery. It would also be less annoying, less distracting. You don't want to have blinking lights all the time, but if you are in a place where having blinking lights would prevent someone from turning left and hitting you, not bad. That's where I'm going to leave it for today. It's 1 hour. 1 hour. That's crazy. I thought this might be 30 minutes. So thanks for listening as always. Don't forget to check out buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo for links to all of my audio productions. You don't have to spend any money there. There's affiliate links. So if you want to spend money or support the show, affiliate links to some of my favorite coffee beans and some other products I actually use. I think I might have Google Workspace on there because they're really pushing it. Oh, get money for recommending. Okay, sure. So there's a few affiliate links of different kinds there. If any of those are interesting, there are things I actually use. And then you can buy me a coffee if you want. All proceeds do go towards coffee and coffee accessories, which is what powers productions like this. And so that's it. That's all I got. Now go out there and don't hit a pedestrian. Or if you're a pedestrian, don't be hit by a car. Take care now. Bye-bye. Happy New Year.